Hi everyone, welcome to week 2 of FOAT 1064. Well, how's it going out there? I hope you made it through your first week of this course and first week of this program. For a lot of you, this is your first time in post-secondary education, so I just hope it's going well. And don't forget, if you have any questions about anything, about the program, about photo loans, about the trips that are coming up, please send me an email or at least talk to some of your classmates, talk to the people in loans, and talk to your instructors. And just make sure you get your questions answered. Anyways, exposure. Last week we talked about exposure. We talked about controlling the light entering the camera. We talked about things like shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. And one thing I can't stress enough is, looking back to last week, and I gave you the list of standard f-stops and shutter speeds and ISOs, start memorizing those. For example, if you were to write the midterm, you might see a question like this where I'll start off the series and then I'll ask you to finish the series up to a certain value. Well, could you do that? So very important thing for you to do. Just about any textbook on photography, book on photography, any course on photography, usually that's one of the first things that they instill in you. Start memorizing those values. It will make your life a lot easier, especially in lighting techniques when you're in the studio and in your practical class where you're going to be asked to constantly change the settings on your camera. So I gave you this sheet. Please use it. Use it to practice and just start getting it to the point where you don't have to think about those numbers anymore. They just start coming in naturally. So this week, we're going to continue this whole concept of exposure. So last week, we talked about getting light into a camera and controlling how much light gets into that camera. Well, how do we know how much light we need to have enter the camera in the first place? How do we know what aperture and what shutter speed settings are going to allow the right amount of light to get in? So that's what we're going to talk about this week. And more specifically, we'll be talking about light meters, because that's what light meters do. They tell us which settings will work to get the proper amount of light going into our camera. So we'll talk about light meters. We'll talk about the two basic types of light meters, a reflected and an incident light meter. And we'll also talk about something called 18% gray and why you should know that. Another thing we'll talk about is reciprocity. And it sounds like a very serious word, and it kind of is in a lot of, not just in this context. And it's something that a lot of people find challenging, especially people who are new to photography. So we'll talk about that, and the sooner we can start understanding reciprocity, the better. Reciprocity sort of ties in with this concept of, for any given scene, there's many multiple combinations of exposure settings that will give you a good exposure. So, in other words, in this room, for example, there is a f-stop and shutter speed combination that would produce a good exposure. So actually, there's several combinations that will work. And so we'll talk about how you can change from one setting to another, and that's where reciprocity ties in. So lots for you guys to do this week. I'm just going to shift over to the web browser just to show you what you'll see when you go on to Fanch Online. So when you go to lesson 2 and you look at the content, there's readings just like we had to do last week. This week it's going to be chapters 7 and chapter 8, and I've got very specific pages that I would like you to read, and of course that's from Ben Long's Complete Digital Photography. And just like last week, there is a quiz that I'd like you to complete after you finish doing the readings. Also on lynda.com, I have some videos that I would like you to watch. There's actually 3 videos, and I'll just tell you what they are. One is the exposure triangle. It's called the exposure triangle and reciprocity. There's one called light metering, and there's one that just talks about shutter and aperture priority mode. So some important exposure concepts. So reciprocity can be a big topic. So make sure you watch my second video where I kind of bring everything together. And I'm just going to go over a couple of concepts to just reinforce your knowledge and appreciation for reciprocity and how it works. And I'll show you just kind of how the numbers work and give you some tricks for understanding how to make a conversion from one exposure setting to another. And then we're going to do something different this week. I'm actually going to give you an assignment where you get to use your camera, take some pictures, and submit them into the submission Dropbox on FOL. And I have a question and answer sheet that I want you to hand in as well. So this will be our first assignment in this course. You actually have 4 assignments. In addition to all the tests, you have 4 assignments, and this is one of them. And if you click on the PDF there, you'll see that it will open up this sheet that has the instructions, and I'll post a little video to show you how how to set your camera up for all that. And you'll see. You should do this assignment last. So do the readings, do the videos, watch my video, and then the last thing you should do is the actual assignment. And that's just one assignment that just allows me to check to see make sure that you're getting it and that you're understanding everything that we're talking about. Are we good? I will see you in my next video once you get through all this. All right.